There's a 12-team playoff in NCAA Football Dynasty mode now, so going into Deion Sanders' 4th year at Colorado, my goal is to finish the year as one of those top 12 teams. We have a 98 overall halfback in Dylan Edwards, and he had a picture-perfect start to his senior season. Somehow, he escaped from almost all of the North Dakota State players on this play, and once he got past them, there wasn't a chance any of them were going to be able to track him down. Our rushing attack was going to be hard to stop, and so far our defense made sure that the Bison only went backward. It was going to be a long day for them as they had no answer to stopping Dylan Edwards, and if our little 5'8" halfback kept playing like this, he would definitely be in the running for the Heisman. I mean, so far he was responsible for 4 of our 5 touchdowns, and he finished with almost 300 total yards. Pac-12 conference play began against our rivals, and just like the week before, we were leaning on Dylan Edwards because we were going to need to score a lot to keep up. Our defense didn't come out playing well, but junior Tanner Keys had improved his accuracy throughout the offseason as he hit Joe Wilson in stride, and he was also much better at running the option, which made us very hard to stop. We finally held the Rams on this long 3rd and 10, and that gave us a minute and a half to go down the field and score before the half, which you know we had to do our best to take advantage of. There was simply nobody on Colorado State that was going to be able to keep up with Dylan Edwards, and on the rare occasion that we did pass, it wasn't expected, so everybody was open. With about 3 minutes remaining, the Rams were very close to getting into the end zone, but on 4th and goal, we sniffed out the halfback draw and completely locked it up, helping us take down our rivals and improve to 2-0 on the season as number 89 threw multiple huge blocks that would allow quarterback Tanner Keys to hold on to this one and take it all the way into the house himself. Our fans loved the result, and I couldn't believe Keys had 200 rushing yards. Cal was set to be our next victim, and this was a perfect start to the game as Dylan Edwards couldn't have had more clear of a path to take this one all the way. Using his top-end speed, he was able to just outrun everybody for the 84-yard score, and that fantastic play from him got the entire team fired up. It is so obvious why he was already leading the Heisman race, and play action worked so well for us because Cal really wanted to stop him, but at what cost was it worth it? They simply didn't have an answer at all, and just when they thought they were going to keep up, senior All-American cornerback Joshua Wiggins picked off their QB, and I was honestly surprised he didn't end up taking it all the way. Dylan Edwards ended up finishing the job anyways, and it seemed like we were actually really good, so Boise State should have been terrified to play us. Even though they scored first, it only took us 3 offensive snaps for us to do the same as Dylan Edwards continued his Heisman push with a 51-yard touchdown run, and if the Broncos wanted to win today, they needed to find an answer for him. So far, I hadn't seen one as he was carving them apart like he was prime Reggie Bush, and I don't know if anybody is going to be able to stop our offense, so as long as our defense is decent, we'll be fine because every time we go run heavy, we make scoring look like it's the easiest thing. No matter what defensive set Boise State came out in, they couldn't hold our rushing attack, and it was getting very ugly. On top of his 4 touchdowns and 181 rushing yards, Dylan Edwards racked up some receiving stats as well, and obviously that won him player of the game along with getting us to become the 19th best team in the country. Up to this point in the season, our red zone defense had been elite, and time again when we needed a stop inside the 10, we were able to get it, and those ended up making a massive difference, especially when we were able to score with ease. The blocks all lined up perfectly on this run, and we clearly had the future Heisman winner. He opened up everything for us as Fresno State desperately tried to get just one stop, but they weren't able to, and we would leave with a 35-point win. Dylan Edwards had another great performance, and he was far ahead on the Heisman projections as he currently led the country in rushing yards. Playing at number 10 Notre Dame was by far our toughest matchup though, and throughout the first quarter, both defenses were incredible. However, that didn't last as this blitz didn't get in fast enough, and Cormani McClain was the only one left to beat. He tried to make a play, but he got shoved out of the way, giving up the first touchdown, and the pressure was starting to get to Dylan Edwards. Without him pulling off any breakaway runs, we were in trouble as everything that had worked against all of our past opponents was not today, so Tanner Keys was being forced to pass the ball instead of keeping it on the ground, and we luckily ended the first half by getting 6, but Notre Dame got the ball to start the third quarter, and they did this. It was clear that winning this game was going to take a lot, and on 3rd and 10, we finally got the defensive stop we needed, which we took full advantage of as we tied it at 21. Unfortunately though, with about a minute left, the Irish looked like they were going to have the final possession of the game, and they took the clock all the way down before converting on this long 3rd and 10, which set them up for the go-ahead field goal. The only good thing was this wasn't a conference loss, loss, and there was a 12-team playoff, so this result wouldn't ruin our year, but it definitely stung quite a bit. Undefeated number 2 Oregon was next on the schedule, which was going to be a very hard one to win, especially since they'd done a good job of containing Dylan Edwards so far. It was rare for us to ever settle for 3, but we did while the Ducks quarterback was doing everything he could to get them touchdowns. Tanner Keys had no choice but to respond with one of his own on our next possession, and I was honestly just thankful we held the Ducks to 3 here. They would go into the half up by 6, but it could have been much worse, and then it did get worse as our quarterback opened up the third quarter by floating the football into an interception, and we could have picked up a big gain there, but instead it turned into Oregon going up by 13, and we were not in a great position as the Ducks continued to score on us. With 2.5 minutes left though, Tanner Keys did all he could to keep it within one possession, and then just a few plays later we forced the Ducks into a quick 3-and-out. We were in a position to take a lead on this drive, but then came the worst sack ever, and I don't know what Tanner Keys was thinking, but even on a perfectly thrown ball we couldn't pick up the 4th and 29, and you would think that was it, but while running out the clock we forced Oregon into a massive fumble, and after that happened there was no way we could lose this game as Tanner Keys finished the job. I have never seen an ending like that before, but we were now 6-1 along with remaining undefeated in conference play. Obviously that ending was exciting, and I'm also excited to show you all my selections on Prize Picks for tonight's playoff game. Jokic has gone higher on points in the last 5, so I'm going with it again, while fading LeBron 3-point attempts and Aaron Gordon as well. As always, there's a link at the top of the description to download Prize Picks, and when you sign up with code BOARD, you'll double your initial deposit up to $100. Anyways, let me know what you think of these picks. Remember to play responsibly when you use code BOARD, and let's see how the rest of the season goes. Stanford was 6-2, so we couldn't take them lightly, and I thought the offense looked alright, but costly drops were keeping us behind. All of a sudden, we had fallen back by 17 points, and even Dylan Edwards was struggling as he couldn't run or catch today. Honestly, it looked like we were going to get run off the field until Adam White read the Cardinal quarterback like a book with this interception, and it's too bad he wasn't faster, but at least he got all the way down to the 35. It might have taken us the entire first half, but Chase Sowell was finally able to get us on the board, and we were right back in this football game. All we had to do was stop them one more time, but that wasn't coming easy, and I hated that we had to stray away from the run, but it no longer worked while passing seemed to give us a shot. With 2 minutes left, knowing that the run was coming, you'd think that we would hold them, but that was the complete opposite of what actually ended up happening, and that was how we lost our second game of the year, which didn't hurt Dylan Edwards' Heisman odds, but it would probably hurt our Pac-12 championship odds. However, it honestly didn't change much at all, because if we beat Utah in week 14, we would still make the conference championship, and that would also lock us into the 12-team playoff, so we just needed to win out. Against Arizona State, our offense finally got back into a rhythm, and it had been a long few weeks, but it felt good to start scoring with ease again. Dylan Edwards also continued his Heisman campaign with another game around 200 rushing yards, and then the weather struck Boulder hard. We had to play in a blizzard, and quarterback Tanner Keys looked lost out there, so it's a good thing for Dylan Edwards because he kept this offense on track as he scored our first 2 touchdowns of the day. The great part was he wasn't done after that either, juking out 2 players and walking into the end zone untouched. That also wasn't the last time San Diego State would hear of him, as for like the 30th time he got amazing blocks and sped his way past everybody. Unfortunately though, that didn't stop the Aztecs from crawling all the way back into it, and with 4.5 minutes remaining, Tanner Keys had a touchdown, but he underthrew the pass into an interception, and he was just lucky that Mills made the tackle of the century so the Aztecs didn't pick up this 3rd and long. To win, we simply needed to run out the rest of the clock, but since our rushing attack was so good, that wouldn't end up happening the way we needed it to. Dylan Edwards scored another one instead, and luckily, in the end, it wouldn't end up biting us in the butt as our playoff hopes remained alive. Arizona was one of the final teams we had to play, but everybody's mind was already looking forward to next week's matchup because we were going to be battling it out with Utah for a spot in the Pac-12 championship, as the Wildcats were one of the easiest wins we got this season. Dylan Edwards continued to cook, and there was no way he didn't win the Heisman, but for now, all that mattered was one game. This one was for a spot in the Pac-12 championship, and even though we were at home, beating number 7 Utah was going to be very difficult. Their offense was just as good as ours as they scored with ease, so we had to pull out all of the tricks, and I couldn't believe this worked on the kickoff return, but when you get someone like Dylan Edwards the ball off of a lateral, he just makes things happen as he broke away and took this one all the way into the end zone. He was having a monster game as before the end of the 3rd quarter, he had already found the end zone 3 times, but Utah simply wasn't going away. In fact, although it was fluky, they would take a lead with 2 minutes remaining in the first half, and we were just trading touchdowns back and forth like it was nothing. No matter who had the ball, they made sure to score, and it stayed this way all game. With 2 minutes remaining, the Utes were able to go back up by 3 like this, which ended up putting the pressure on us to pull off a money drive, but Tanner Keys was determined to lead this team to a Pac-12 championship. He didn't want to settle for 3 in overtime, so with only a few seconds remaining, he made one of the best plays in Colorado history, and that meant we had won our division. The Pac-12 championship was a huge rematch, and it was going to be good. Oregon was ranked as the number 3 team in the country for a reason, but we were the one team that beat them, so we should be fine. Now, that missed throw would end up leading to the Ducks taking a 2-possession lead, but because Dylan Edwards was on our side, I wasn't very worried. He was probably going to win the Heisman, and he was far from the only weapon we had on this team, as tight end Mike Moore could moss players. The only issue was Oregon's running back continued to score on us, and that was the start of the biggest decline we had seen yet. After not scoring on that possession, we somehow gave up a touchdown here, and Tanner Keys was not handling the heat the Ducks sent his way very well. This 4th and 18 felt like one we had to go for, and almost instantly it turned into disaster, so Oregon would end up going up by 17, and coming back from that deficit would be pretty much impossible. We tried to get onside kicks, but they just didn't work out, and the real question was if this would put us out of the 12-team playoff, as this would be our 3rd loss of the year. This Pac-12 championship result obviously hurt, but what was scarier was a great season going to waste. Dylan Edwards won the Heisman, and with stats like these, it was obviously well deserved, but it wasn't enough for us to be ranked as one of the best 12 teams. Instead, we got a bowl game against Pitt, and it's not like it didn't matter, but it didn't matter. In the 12-team playoff era, nobody cared about bowl games, so Deion Sanders just had his guys mess around with laterals and such, which led to a really cool kick return from our Heisman-winning running back that didn't have a chance to play in the college football playoffs. It was just disappointing all around, but on the bright side, the future at Colorado was clearly going to be good, and I have no idea how Dylan Edwards didn't end up getting drafted.